Muito bom, boa noite. Estão ouvindo? Quem está aí nos comentários pode dizer se o som está tudo ok. Estamos no ar. Encontro 55 da AWS User Group São Paulo, tudo ok? Vocês escutam? Ok, produção, Francisco, Vanessa. Aê, a Vanessa está dizendo que sim. Pessoal, hoje nós temos a honra aqui de receber uma amiga da Índia. São 4:30 da manhã lá. Eu vou trocar rapidinho aqui para inglês, para apresentá-la. Bom, fica com vocês aí a missão de recebê-la bem nos comentários, porque são 4:30 da manhã lá no fuso horário dela, tá? Valeu, vou trocar aqui para inglês, vou apresentar e a gente já vai para a apresentação hoje, tá? No final do encontro, nós vamos dar alguns recados, incluído lá o workshop sobre VPC 101 e sobre algumas frentes novas que nós estamos abrindo aqui, tá? No final do encontro, depois da apresentação e das perguntas e respostas lá. Vou trocar para inglês, tá bom? Whoa. More than 1 year of negotiation to be able to bring you here, Bhuvaneswari.
No, not at all. I'm glad.
You are very welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us. You know, I was speaking in Portuguese. You are here with us today, sharing knowledge. But to you is 4:30 a.m., right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Hey guys, don't forget to welcome her in the comments. 4:30, a.m. It's 4 a.m. to her. So don't forget it in the comments. That will be awesome. Bhuvaneswari, thank you so much. It's up to you from now, and we will back in the end of your presentation, or in case of any problem, right?
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Marcelo. Thanks a lot to the AWS User Group Sao Paulo for getting me on board to have along with you. Let's get started. Today's topic is going to be a path to continuous integration and continuous delivery on AWS. A quick introduction about myself, though Marcelo have told in Portuguese as well as English. This is Bhuvaneswari Subramani here. You can call Bhuvana for short. I work for Inford as Director of Engineering Operations. And I'm also proud to say a DevTools hero from India, and also always AWS User Group Bengaluru represent. Over and above the work I do, I'm really passionate about training and technical writing. So with this quick introduction, let's get started with today's agenda. First, we're going to look into the pathway to continuous integration and continuous delivery. Then we will have a quick overview of AWS Developer Tools that I use for CI/CD. And I will take you through a quick use case leveraging AWS CI/CD services. And we will also discuss about the best practice for continuous integration and continuous delivery. Finally, we will talk about some of the metrics to gauge the continuous delivery implementation. We'll get started with a pathway to CI/CD. There are 4 stages when you wanted to take your source code from the developer's hand to the destination, that is your production environment. The moment user commits the code at one end, how quickly error-free mode can we take it to the production environment? That's our end goal, right? With that, we have to ensure that developer commit the code to the central source control system and then compile it in an automated way take it to the staging environment, run variety of test suites, and then finally with approval you can take it to the production environment. So when we have AWS Developer Tools, how does different AWS Developer Tools fit into these 4 stages to take the code changes or feature changes to the production swiftly? The first one is AWS CodeCommit, which can help the developers to commit the changes, get the peer review done, ensure your source code is version controlled effectively. And we have AWS CodeBuild, which can compile the source code, generate the deployable artifact, and then upload it to the S3 bucket, which can be later consumed for your deployment. And the next step is deploying the artifact which is built in the previous stage to the staging environment, which could be achieved by AWS CodeDeploy. And you can integrate with wide variety of third-party tools to run your different test suites. It could be your user interface test, performance test, security test, all kinds of tests. And finally, when you're ready, you have to take the code changes to the production environment. And that's again achieved by using AWS CodeDeploy. When you have all these stages and different tools, how would you connect them together? That is achieved by AWS CodePipeline. So now we'll move on to the next step. What are the different phases of software development? The first and foremost thing here is to set up continuous integration. In order to set up continuous integration, you have to ensure by defining a process and principle that your developer commits the code changes to the central source control management system periodically. The central source control management system can be your CodeCommit or GitHub or any other tools, but from AWS we have AWS CodeCommit to facilitate as a source control management system. And you'll have to leverage AWS CodeBuild to build the code changes. Whenever somebody commits a code into the CodeCommit repository for a specific branch, ensure a build is triggered, the changes are compiled, artifact is generated. This will ensure there is no breakage in the code changes. At least it would detect there are no compilation errors, and at each stage here the feedback is sent periodically to the respective teams, which will help them to work on it instead of waiting for the end moment to go live with the production. So the feedback is very important here, and we'll have to ensure developer commit the changes to the central branch periodically. If they have to work on a feature for a long period of time, then they can have the changes in a separate feature branch, but they'll have to ensure that they have to get the changes from the central branch quite often to the feature branch so that it is intact. So now we are good with the first phase of establishing continuous integration. We'll move on to the second phase, which is about continuous delivery in creating a staging environment. Once you have the artifact generated as part of build using AWS CodeBuild, next thing we'll have to do is deploy that artifact onto a staging environment and get it validated. This staging environment could be a pre-prepared environment similar to your production stack for your testing purpose, or you can create this, rather provision the staging environment using infrastructure as a code, so that it's easier and quicker to create the production environment in no time. So at this staging environment, you can integrate with wide variety of third-party tools. It could be Blazemeter, or if you have Jenkins, which is already running your UI test, or if you have load runner, all that can be integrated with your pipeline. So that is the goal. So now we have ensured continuous integration is done in this first phase. Now to establish the continuous delivery, we are taking the code changes, compiling it, generating the artifact, and deploying to the staging environment. Also run wide variety of test suites. So to create the staging environment, we can use CloudFormation template, the cloud native tool, or you can leverage Chef, Puppet, Ansible, or even Terraform to create or provision these resources. In addition to CloudFormation template, AWS also provides Elastic Beanstalk Opsworks to facilitate creating resources. So now we have a staging environment ready. It's part of our continuous delivery step. So what is the next phase? After testing, our ultimate goal is to take changes to the production environment. Done. So as part of this third phase, we're going to create the package that is generated in this build step and that has been validated in the staging environment. Now it's all set to go to the production environment. So again here, the stack can be built up using CloudFormation template or Elastic Beanstalk or Opsworks to spin up your infrastructure and get the application deployed. So we are good. Once this continuous delivery is established and one environment is spun up, how do you ensure this process goes on and on? We'll have to move on to the final phase of establishing continuous deployment. So we need to have the automated deployment in place, which pulls the artifact from the previous step, deploy it onto the staging environment. Once it's all done, we can take it to the production environment seamlessly. So that is our ultimate goal. Remember, you may follow whatever may be the development methodology. Could be your agile development methodology, feature development methodology. Our ultimate goal is to take the code changes from our source code management system to the production environment as quickly as possible, right? So the continuous integration and continuous deployment, leveraging the AWS Developer Tools would facilitate that. So what are the teams involved in implementing CI/CD? They're pretty much aware of the application developers, right? In addition to that, we also have infrastructure developers and tooling developers when we wanted to implement CI/CD. The application developers are responsible for taking their backlog, working on the user stories, creating a finished product, which is deploy ready. Remember, these developers should be free to focus on non-code application development, right? That means they should focus only on the core application, not on the non-core activities like creating the infrastructure, or establishing CI/CD. So next, coming back to the infrastructure developers, they are responsible for working on the automation required to create the resources for deploying the application. This team could be relatively small compared to the application developer team, and they ensure that required resources will be created through infrastructure as a code. Now we have the application code ready and infrastructure code ready. Who's going to work on the orchestration of establishing the CI/CD process? And that is the tooling developer team. They will ensure to develop the required tooling which can be used both by the application developers as well as information developers to help take the feature changes from source to the production quickly. We will see AWS Developer Tools which are related to establishing CI/CD. The first one is AWS CodeCommit. Using AWS CodeCommit, you can quickly set up the central source control management system for your product. CodeCommit is a managed service, so it is secure, highly scalable, and if you know Git already, you know 90% of AWS CodeCommit. You can work with CodeCommit using your standard Git tools. You don't have to worry about training your developers on how to use CodeCommit. Only the person from the tooling side who's going to set up the CodeCommit repo and working on the required permission should be knowledgeable, but it should be seamless for the developers or users who are going to commit the changes to CodeCommit. CodeCommit has the goodness of scalability, availability, and durability of Amazon S3 and DynamoDB. Hence, it is highly scalable, and there is no limit on the number of repositories you create, or there is no limit on the size of the repository that you're going to create on CodeCommit. Because we know there is no upper limit for data that you put on S3 or DynamoDB. Since CodeCommit is backed by these two services, there is no limit on number of repositories you create or size of the repository. And you can also establish post-commit hooks to call out Lambda or send out explicit SMS notification during the commit process or different process. So that's about CodeCommit. And you have all the features and goodness of traditional source control system with CodeCommit as well. You have very good DAG-based visualizer with which you can compare and contrast at least 35 branches at a time simultaneously using the UI. And you'll be able to seamlessly compare two files. And you can raise pull requests, get it reviewed by the peer before you commit the changes into the source control system. Now, moving on to AWS CodeBuild, we have found a place to store the code. The next step is to take the code changes periodically, compile it, and generate artifact. We have AWS CodeBuild as a fully managed service, which is going to facilitate that. Remember, this CodeBuild scales continuously and is capable of processing multiple bits. The moment you trigger a build, it is going to spin up a container as your build instance with the specification or the size you have mentioned. It could be small, medium, large, based on your requirement. It would spin up a container instance and run the build. So each build invocation is going to be in a separate container instance. So the number of parallel builds will not impact each other. Okay? So you can also provide custom build environments if you find the existing build environments as not meeting your purpose or need. And the best thing here is you're going to pay only by the number of minutes that the compute resource will be used. So when a build kicks off, the first thing is it's provision the infrastructure, that is creates a container instance, get the source code onto this container, compile it, generate artifact, store it in the place wherever you are mentioning, and this container instance is gone. So when every time this independent container is created, the performance of one build do not impact the performance of the other. And one good feature with all these AWS Developer Tools is this can be launched either with CodePipeline or it can be integrated with Jenkins using AWS CodeBuild plugin. Remember, if you are running your build all these while for several years in your data center world, leveraging Jenkins, you may not be able to migrate to AWS Cloud overnight. Yes, don't have to worry. You can take one step at a time. Probably first you may want to set up CodeCommit and continue to use Jenkins as the orchestration tool. Plus, you can gradually move CodeBuild to AWS and integrate with Jenkins using AWS CodeBuild plugin. So we can transition to the cloud in a phased manner without impacting ongoing service and delivery. So when you create the CodeBuild project, what are the information that we have to focus on giving? The first thing is where to get the source code. You have to name the repository and the branch name and which build environment to use. You have to mention the operating system and it's a .NET, Java, Python. But the build environment is, you would name the build environment and then where to store the artifact. Choose the S3 bucket where the artifact has to store. And finally, and most important configuration, where to store the build logs. You can choose either CloudWatch or S3 bucket where you can store the build logs that will be used for review later. Finally, here is AWS CodeDeploy service. It's yet another fully managed service which can help automate code deployment to EC2 on-premise instances or even deploy your Lambda function. Okay. If you set up the automation and have the code deploy configured to deploy to one EC2 instance, this handles the complexity of updating your application to hundreds and thousands of instances seamlessly. How would you do it is, any instance on which you have to do a deployment via CodeDeploy should have a CodeDeploy agent installed and configured. Once you have this done, then the instance can get the deployment through AWS CodeDeploy. Using AWS CodeDeploy, you can achieve deployment with minimal downtime. Also, you can enable rollback automatically configuration so that if there are any failure during the deployment, it could quickly roll back. And it supports variety of languages and operating systems. You should be able to integrate CodeDeploy with third-party tools like Jenkins as well, in addition to AWS CodePipeline. So what are the different components of AWS CodeDeploy? First thing, the most important thing is the application that we are planning to deploy onto the target environment. And the next one is deployment group. It's nothing but the group of instances on which you have to deploy the specific version or edition. And finally, how would you do the deployment? You have several deployment strategies. One is in-place deployment, the other one is blue-green deployment. In in-place deployment, you're going to bring down the service in the existing EC2 instance, update the newer version, and then bring up the service so it will start serving the traffic. That is in-place deployment. In blue-green deployment, while the current version is running, you would develop the newer version with the whole infrastructure parallelly. During the cutover time, you would swap from the existing blue version to the new green version. So when we talk about code deploy components, basically we will have to focus on what to deploy, that is the application to be deployed, and where to deploy. We are going to group the instances. For example, your website has different tiers. It could be web tier, messaging tier, reporting tiers. You could group web tier, which has 10 EC2 instances as one group, and get the application deployed to this web tier. Similarly, you can group other tiers and get the respective application deployed to it. And where do you put the configurations of how the deployment should happen? That is in the abspec.yaml file as well as deploy.config file. So in abspec.yaml file, you would put two important things. One is the files from where you copy to the which location. And the scripts will have the information about what is that it's going to be executed to copy the respective files and do the deployment. Okay, you will have different sections in the hooks where you define what script will be used to stop the running service, what script will be used to install and configure your application. So all these will be configured in the abspec.yaml file. And coming back to the deploy config, it will carry the information like, should I install to all the 10 instances in the web tier at one time? Or should I bring down half of the instances so that the traffic will be served for the user 50% of the instances? That apart, you can also bring down all the instances and deploy. Okay, there are three options: one at a time, half at a time, and all at a time. So this abspec.yaml file and the deploy config determines how do you deploy to the target environment. Finally, we have AWS CodePipeline, which will help to glue all the different stages: source, build, deploying to staging environment, getting a manual approval if needed from the release manager before we take it to production, finally deploying to the production, right? So these steps can be visualized very well and modeled using AWS CodePipeline, and you can establish continuous delivery in a fast and reliable manner. So you can leverage AWS CodePipeline to build, run wide variety of tests and deploy your code changes to production for every commit as well. You can integrate with third-party tools. So what are the components of AWS CodePipeline? Stage, action, and transition. That's what we see here. If you say pulling the source code from CodeCommit repository, that is the source stage, building and generating the artifact, that is yet another stage, could be build. So in a stage, you will have actions. The actions in a stage could be parallel, or it could be sequential, or a combination of all these things. So when you wanted to move from one stage to another stage, that is called transition. Remember, always in a pipeline, each stage acts as a gate for the previous stage. I'll show you with a workflow example so that we can very well relate these action stage and transition to the code pipeline. So with this introduction to AWS Developer Tools, let's have a quick look at the pricing. Why did I bring in a slide to talk about pricing? When we are trying to understand about AWS Developer Tools or any new tools for the matter, there is always a hesitation for us to give it a try, to learn something. Okay, I'm not sure how much it's going to cost. So you don't have to have that hesitation while exploring AWS Developer Tools. As we all know, in free tier account, majority of the services are free for us to use for 1 year. Even beyond 1 year period, this pricing list, whatever I have mentioned, applies. If you're using CodeCommit repository for your exploration, you can have 5 active users per month free. And beyond that, if you're going to have users, you're going to pay $1 per additional active user per month. So if you're trying to explore yourself or with your friend, it's free. If you want to leverage AWS CodeBuild, you're going to use it for your need, and you would pay only for the number of build minutes that you're consuming the resources. And with CodeDeploy, deploy to EC2 instance is completely free, and you have to pay a nominal fee of $0.02 to deploy to on-premise instance. And for AWS CodePipeline, you pay only for the active pipeline, that too which is active for more than a month. If you want to explore, try and tear down, it's absolutely free for us to explore, right? Nothing is stopping us from learning. Now let's look into a use case. How can we leverage these AWS CI/CD service in practice? This use case is going to be web application deployment, where we look into in-place deployment to an existing EC2 instance. That is, I'm going to deploy to a pre-prepared EC2 instance, where this will install Tomcat if it does not exist. Otherwise, restart Tomcat. Deploy the web application through the instructions defined in abstract.yaml, and then start the Tomcat service. So here is the workflow. So we have Java application developers who work on code changes and commit it to the CodeCommit repository. That is on one side. So our developers work on stories, backlogs to get the feature changes to production. On the other side, we spoke about pre-prepared environment. So in our use case, EC2 instance is up and running, and we are going to deploy to that pre-prepared EC2 instance. So we have virtual private cloud. For this example, I placed the EC2 instance in public subnet, but ideally the recommendation is to have the EC2 instance in private subnet. And if administrative purpose you wanted to access, that can be accessed via a bastion host which is set up in the public subnet. In our EC2 instance, our web application is going to be hosted in this one. For your large scale usage, it's best to leverage auto scaling group with elastic load balancer. But for now, we are limiting with deployment to a single EC2 instance. Remember, with CodePipeline and CodeDeploy, if you have established the automation for one EC2 instance, try and test it, you can seamlessly take it to hundreds and thousands of EC2 instances. Okay, so we have this EC2 instance which is connected to the external world through the internet gateway, and end users should be able to access the application from the internet. Okay. So now coming back to our pipeline, we are going to set up a 3-stage pipeline: source, build, and deploy. In the source stage, we will have one action created that will be configured with AWS CodeCommit to pull the source code from the respective branch. And while transitioning to the build stage, the code that is pulled from CodeCommit repository is stored in a temporary S3 bucket and given to this particular build stage. In build stage, again here we have two actions. One action could compile the source code, generate the artifact, and put it in the S3 bucket. The other action can optionally run the JUnit test or other tests that are required by our application. Now from this build stage to deploy stage, the transition happens, and in the deploy stage, we're going to leverage AWS CodeDeploy to do the deployment, which would pull the artifact from S3 bucket and deploy it onto EC2 instance. The deploy instructions are provided in abstract.yaml file. Remember, this is a pre-prepared environment where we have CodeDeploy agent already installed into this EC2 instance. Hence, this CodeDeploy can talk to this EC2 instance with its name. EC2 instance name can be configured for the CodeDeploy, where the deployment can happen seamlessly. So this is our pipeline. So when we execute the pipeline, what happens? Here is the screen print for our web application deployment pipeline execution. Whenever a code changes is committed to the source control repository AWS CodeCommit, the build gets triggered. It indicates that this particular revision is pulled from the source control repository and then passes on to the build, where it compiles, generates the artifact, stores into the S3 bucket, and transitions to the staging, where the deployment happens through AWS CodeDeploy to our pre-prepared staging environment. In the same pipeline, if you wanted to extend to production environment, you can add one more stage and happy to go. So the pipeline can be leveraged, edited as needed to accommodate different actions in the same stage, or you can add multiple stages even after you create. So it's highly flexible for you to use. So what are the best practices and metrics while we talk about CI/CD implementation? First thing, the recommended thing is to treat your infrastructure as a code. When we wanted to create a staging environment or a production environment, treat that infrastructure as a code. You can leverage AWS CloudFormation template to create your resources. AWS CloudFormation template can be implemented with JSON or YAML notation, similar to your application-specific files. How we put them in a centrally managed source control system, you can create a separate dedicated repository for infrastructure code. Yes, you will have to put the infrastructure code in a separate repository from that of application code, have it version controlled, and get peer review done before you commit the changes to the central branch. So this will ensure that we can create throwaway environments, or we can build infrastructure for the upcoming environments repeatably in no time. With this, production rollout becomes more simplified. And the next best practices is ensure your developers commit the code changes to the central branch frequently with no long running branches. You cannot keep a feature branch open for 6 months or 1 year, right? Though occasionally, like, you can have a feature branch running for a couple of months, but even in this case, you ensure that the feature branch gets the changes from the upstream quite often so that you don't miss out the changes from the central branch. Otherwise, one fine day, if you're going to commit or if you're going to promote your feature branch to central, it's going to boom. It's going to break. So ensure your developers commit code changes periodically and have developers build unit tests towards 100% coverage of the code. Not just building, this has to be kept up to date to avoid breakages, because we're going to rely on the CI/CD system, which gives quicker feedback to the teams. So having all kinds of test measures automated will help us to identify the issues earlier in the cycle of the CI/CD implementation. And establish role-based security controls. We saw application developer, infrastructure developer, tooling developer. The application developer should have read-write access to code commit repository, but not administrator. Infrastructure developer should be able to commit and read from the repository specific to the infrastructure code, but they should not mess up with the CI/CD implementation. Similarly, the tooling developer should be cautious in implementing this. So for each of the role, you give the corresponding permissions and ensure you have provided view access to your application developers also on the infrastructure code, so they will know how the implementation is done. It's not like data center world where people focus only on application. They can be unaware of how the infrastructure is created, all that. With cloud, we have much more transparency, and it's good for them to have that additional knowledge to see how the infrastructures are created. So this will help the application developers eventually start focusing more on leveraging cloud native tools to develop their application and to take the benefit of the complete cloud functionalities. And you keep track of standard metrics. That is very important, right? You can use CloudWatch to view the metrics, or you can leverage Splunk, Logic, or Logic Monitor, different services for monitoring your services. You treat continuous delivery configuration also as a code. not just application code, infrastructure code. The continuous delivery configurations can also be a code, version control. And you use distinct pipelines for different branches and different teams. This will run seamlessly without impacting the others' delivery and timelines and schedules. We have implemented new tools, CI/CD process. So how would you gauge continuous delivery? How would you claim that we've been successful in implementing all these things? You could gauge your metrics by assessing the following things. Remember, whatever may be the software development methodology that we follow, any new tools that we introduce, our ultimate goal is to take the changes from source code to production faster. So the metric to gauge would be rapid delivery to your production environment with increased efficiency. And when you're getting more number of features delivered with reduced time to the market, then you have achieved. So by establishing CI/CD, if you could give quicker feedback to the system and the user, the stakeholders and teams will be happily implementing the fixes before it bombs in the production, right? Should be happy about capturing more number of defects in the system integration testing or unit testing cycles rather than hearing surprises from your customers on the production environment. More number of tickets in your testing phases will result in lesser number of incidents in pre-production and production environment, which is the success. And leveraging all these AWS Developer Tools, you can ensure high availability. You're going to establish elasticity and scalable infrastructure. In case of your AWS CodeBuild, you don't have to maintain how many EC2 instances should I have to cater the needs of running the builds from different branches, different teams, all that. So we are flexible to leverage AWS CodeBuild, and you're not going to pay when the project is created and available. You're going to pay only when it is being executed for the build minutes that it is executing. It's highly scalable. If there are 10 builds happening or close to a specific cutoff time, there are 100 builds or 500 builds happening parallelly, this would scale up. You don't have to put additional logic of building elasticity of creating and tearing down your EC2 instance. So that is taken care. And coming back to CodeDeploy, based on your enterprise application needs, the auto-scaling group can spin up additional EC2 instance in hundreds and thousands to meet high-level demands of the end users. Based on the traffic, your number of servers could go up and down. So based on that varying need, this CodeDeploy can be leveraged to do the deployment. And you're not paying anything for deploying to EC2 instance. It's absolutely free. So what else is that we are waiting for to leverage? AWS Developer Tools for your CI/CD implementation. Let the DevOps journey continues. Happy learning and wish you all the best from AWS User Group Bengaluru and AWS User Group India. Thank you.
Yeah,
Over
it
to
was
you,
awesome.
Marcelo.
It was awesome. We have many comments the people welcoming you. Good morning. We are delighted to have you in AWS User Group São Paulo. Thanks for timing. Good night. Good night for us, guys. Good morning for her. Good evening. Okay, we have one question from Lucius Curado. He asks you, thank you for sharing your AWS knowledge with us. Could you tell us about which tools you add to your AWS pipeline for DevSecOps? Are you planning to test a new one? How do you test security?
Okay, that's a great question. To secure your DevOps pipeline, you can leverage the static code scanning tools to scan your code before even we do the compilation as part of CodeBuild. And the next step is to detect the vulnerabilities and threats. You can take advantage of AWS Guard Duty along with your pipeline. So with this, you can ensure that the services that you build are scanned before it is taken ahead.
Okay. And you use some tool like that today? Do you use some tool to do this scan or something like that?
Yes, static code check is a mandatory step.
Okay.
And in case when you wanted to integrate an AMI, see right now in the example that we saw, we created an application artifact and deployed to an EC2 instance.
Okay.
What if I wanted to create an AMI from the EC2 instance and use it for a production environment as a baseline? So in that case, this AMI have to be hardened. How would you harden this AMI? You have to ensure that all the best practices are followed. Enable guard duty, have the static scan check all done before this AMI is created from this EC2 instance and used it. So that could be one way of looking at how would you establish security as part of your DevOps practices.
That sounds great. I have a question. I currently use these tools using CloudFormation to declare my pipelines and I suffer for months with a CodeDeploy feature not supported by CloudFormation. I don't know if you use CloudFormation or Terraform. I use CloudFormation, and I would have to ask you if you ever had a case like this, and how did you solve it? I can't tell you how I solved my problem because I did a very ugly thing, so I prefer not talk about that.
Okay, so no worries. CloudFormation, as I've told, it can seamlessly work with CodePipeline. So what you can do is the pipeline, which I have showed, it had only one action here, which will pull the source code from source control repository. If you're leveraging infrastructure as a code, you can have one more action in the source, which will pull the source code from source control repository. So after that, you can you don't have to compile anything with respect to CloudFormation template. We will move on to the deploy stage. So you would put one more stage for infrastructure code, and later on deploy stage, if I want to create this instance as part of CloudFormation template instead of a pre-prepared one, I can introduce another stage here. So from here, using this CloudFormation template, which is pulled from this infrastructure code, I can put it in this using another AWS CodeDeploy action to create the EC2 instance. So AWS CodeDeploy supports wide variety of services. One is deploying to EC2 instance, CloudFormation template. Using CloudFormation template, you can create any resources as part of the pipeline. You can create EC2 instance. That is a pretty straightforward thing. If you're trying to create Lambda, then it's going to be a two-step, where the first step is to create a stack, and then next step is to update a stack. Probably I can provide a link to the lab series which I have written, where you can leverage infrastructure as a code as part of your pipeline to spin up an EC2 instance, and also to create a Lambda function as part of a pipeline. I'll ping you over the chat or in the YouTube link for the blog later today. Okay?
Great, okay. I'm sure people would like to hear you from few more hours, but I promise you that we will not take more than 1 hour here. I would say thank you very much again, and have a great day.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really, really excited to be part of this session. The day we met Vanessa in reInvent 2019, so we thought we should do a session, but finally we made it with your support, Marcelo. Thank you so much, and wishing
We
you
did it.
all the best. Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
É isso então, pessoal. Vou trazer aqui para terminar esse encontro. Espero que vocês tenham gostado. Foi realmente um ano. Vini Caridá, tudo bem? Boa noite.
Olá, boa noite, tudo bom?
Tudo jóia. Tô contando, pessoal, aqui foi um ano aqui de conversa com ela para... Eu não vou tentar falar o nome dela de novo. Eu já tentei, já falei com ela no backstage. E, pô, cara, a gente ficou um ano falando chat, LinkedIn, Twitter, porque, pô, para ela o fuso horário é muito ruim. E esse ano a gente topou, pô, vamos. Foi uma boa apresentação, tem vários pontos ali para serem discutidos, especialmente nas melhores práticas. Cada coisa daquela ali pode virar uma apresentação. Obrigado por quem veio, espero que tenha sido bom. A gente vai terminar aqui com algumas informações sobre os próximos passos que a gente vai dar em algumas frentes que a gente está abrindo. E estamos aqui também para apresentar o Vini Caridá, o mais novo membro aí da organização da AWS User Group São Paulo, e a gente vai falar um pouco mais da missão dele, além de ajudar a gente a trazer gente para cá, a organizar os encontros. Em breve, tomara a gente volte a fazer os encontros presenciais. Ele vai ajudar a gente também com uma frente muito importante, tá? Eu vou compartilhar a tela aqui rápido, para a gente não perder tempo. Aqui, essa tela, e vou trazer essa apresentação para cá. Tá vendo a apresentação?
Sim, tá no ar.
Legal. Só para lembrar, para quem é novo no User Group, isso aqui fica aí muito tempo lá no YouTube, então a gente tem lá o código de conduta. Entra lá no GitHub, se você tiver alguma ideia para mexer no código de conduta, nós estamos abertos a receber o seu pull request, tá? E a gente leva a sério isso. Pode chamar a gente de... Outro dia eu vi alguém falando que... Não, um bando de pastores. Então tá bom, então nós somos pastores. Leia lá o código de conduta, a gente leva bastante a sério isso. Workshop aos sábados. A gente vai fazer uma série de workshops aos sábados, workshops de 5 horas para iniciantes, tá? A gente vai abrir inscrição daqui a pouco para o primeiro, que vai acontecer em 27 de março. A motivação, muita gente entra em contato com a gente falando, pô, eu vejo os encontros, eu vejo falando de serverless, eu vejo falando de CI, CD, eu vejo falando de segurança, mas, cara, eu não consigo juntar as coisas. Às vezes, quando tem que resolver um problema de rede aqui, ou às vezes, como tem que fazer um snapshot de um EBS, eu não consigo. Esse é o objetivo, tá? Vai ser uma coisa super autocontida. O primeiro vai ser sobre VPC, e a nossa proposta é que você, que está iniciando, saia dali fazendo uma VPC de cabeça, tá? Conseguindo criar uma VPC de cabeça mesmo. Pré-requisito, você tem que ter uma conta criada. Isso vai valer para todos os workshops. os outros requisitos vão variar, mas para todos você tem que ter uma conta criada, porque você vai receber um crédito da AWS de $25 para colocar nessa conta, e você poder brincar sem se preocupar em gastar dinheiro, tá bom? Então, essa é a ideia, a gente vai abrir daqui a pouco, quem está aqui agora vai ter vantagem, porque são só 20 vagas. Lembra que esse de VPC é um workshop básico, a gente chama de one-on-one, né? Então é para iniciante mesmo, cara. Se você já tem experiência com VPC, talvez não seja para você, tá? Se você já sabe, já sei configurar a rota, já sei configurar a zona de disponibilidade, já sei configurar a security, talvez não seja para você, ou talvez seja, tá? Fica a seu critério aí. A gente ontem estava numa reunião com uma pessoa que entrou em contato com a gente, o Paulo. O Paulo viu o e-mail do user group falando do workshop e ele se interessou em conduzir um workshop. Ele é professor de curso de pós-graduação. Ele também faz parte da comunidade lá do AWS Community Builders. E ele falou, pô, eu quero conduzir um workshop e quero saber como faz. Excelente iniciativa. Entrou em contato, a gente marcou uma reunião, ficamos 1 hora batendo papo, né, Vini?
Isso.
E discutindo o que fazer, e a gente decidiu que ele vai tocar um workshop de Fargate, tá? Como subir uma aplicação com alta disponibilidade no Fargate, tá? Então você vai lidar lá com Security Group, vai lidar lá com permissões, vai lidar com Fargate, né, do ECS, e obviamente esse de VPC vai ser um requisito lá para aquele, tá? Se você tiver alguma ideia de palestra ou workshop, pode encontrar a gente no Twitter aí, tanto faz se é o Vini, se é a Vanessa, se é o Chico, se sou eu. Se você conseguir falar com um de nós, já está valendo. No caso, ele me achou lá no LinkedIn. Se você quiser enviar a proposta para esse formulário que a gente tem de proposta, ele está sempre aberto, tá? Então, AWS SP-C4P, você pode mandar lá a proposta de palestra, a proposta de workshop. Os workshops vão rolar aos sábados, 5 horas, no mínimo, de workshop, porque a gente quer que a pessoa coloque a mão na massa, entendeu? Então a gente vai limitar a 20 pessoas, porque a gente quer tempo de que se a pessoa tiver algum problema, eu vou abrir aqui, nós vamos abrir uma reunião só com essa pessoa, para ajudar essa pessoa a fazer, tá? Essa é a ideia e é por isso que a gente está limitando, cara. Não dá para colocar lá 100 pessoas que a gente não vai ter como fazer isso, e é o que a gente quer fazer nesse momento. Mas se você tiver uma ideia diferente, entre em contato por aqui ou em qualquer outro meio de comunicação, tá? Inscrição para o workshop VPC, esse é o link. Como vai funcionar? Os primeiros 20 que se inscreverem, nós vamos entrar em contato, tem lá algumas informações que você tem que confirmar, né? Dia, horário, requisitos. E aí, se você confirmar, por favor, né? Apareça, porque senão você vai estar tirando o espaço de uma pessoa que poderia estar participando. Então nós vamos abrir aqui hoje, vamos esperar até amanhã, se ainda tiver vaga, nós vamos enviar um e-mail para o grupo inteiro, para ver se preenche essas 20 vagas, tá bom? Esse é um link. Vou deixar aqui um pouco mais.
Isso aí, pessoal, aproveite que vocês estão vendo que tem muita coisa boa aqui no User Group. E reforçando o que o Paladino disse, né? 20 vagas, um workshop super bacana. Então, quem se inscrever, aproveite, né? E se não der para ir, deixe claro para passar essa oportunidade para outras pessoas. Com certeza vão ter muitos interessados.
E nós vamos fazer outros, né, Vini? Se tiver, digamos, 100 inscritos, a gente toca outras edições desse workshop, ué. Não tem problema,
Perfeito.
mas cuidado aí para você não tirar a vaga de alguém, tá? Beleza? Tá lançada, a sorte está lançada. E aí, falando do Vini, o Vini, pô, a gente também tá numa negociação aí de mais de ano já, né, Vini?
Eu
Acho que
não
você
diria, mas é
palestrou,
alguns meses, vai.
faz quase um ano, provavelmente. Lembro que a gente se falou lá ou foi no começo do ano passado. Você já palestrou aqui, né? Foram
Sim.
2 apresentações muito boas, e aí a gente começou a trocar ideia para bolar um conteúdo um pouco mais estruturado, né? Quer falar aí, Vini? Fala o que a gente está pensando em fazer.
Legal, Paladino. Bom, primeiro agradecer mais uma vez a todos, o Vanessa, o Paladino, o Chicão, o Chico, Francisco, eu tô ficando íntimo já, vou começar a chamar de Chico. Mas todos, cara, pela recepção, sempre muito receptivos, desde quando eu dei as palestras, agora também me aceitando aqui no grupo, estou muito feliz de estar aqui. Com certeza vou aprender bastante. Como eu comento, tem muita coisa aqui, muito mais, principalmente voltado para essa parte de engenharia de software, então que eu tenho muito a aprender. E, obviamente, também um pouco para contribuir na linha de machine learning, que é a minha especialidade. E aí, um pouco desses conteúdos mais estruturados que está sendo desenhados para esse ano, como do workshop, etc., nós aqui em conjunto pensamos numa trilha de machine learning. Vai começar em abril, é o primeiro encontro. A ideia serão 5 encontros para fazer um Zero to Hero aqui de Machine Learning SageMaker. Então, a ideia é começar e quem participar dos 5 encontros terminar com um MVPzinho rodando end-to-end, com uma aplicaçãozinha em Machine Learning rodando. Então, é um passo que a gente acredita que vai ser bem legal para quem quer começar aqui nessa área de Machine Learning, vai conseguir sair com uma base bem legal aqui de prática também.
Pô, eu vou falar por mim, eu tô super ansioso por esse conteúdo, a gente já se falou sobre isso, né? Eu certamente vou aprender muito com isso, porque é um campo que eu não conheço nada. E quando a gente começou a falar, putz, é óbvio que a motivação do todo sempre é maior do que a motivação individual, né? Mas eu individualmente fiquei motivado em participar desses encontros, como para ver se acende alguma fagulha ali para estudar isso mais seriamente, que eu acho que deveria, acho um excelente complemento. Você falou de engenharia de software, né, para quem é desenvolvedor, ou arquiteto, ou está fazendo DevOps, por exemplo, ou está praticando DevOps, fazendo DevOps, que estranho, né? Daqui a pouco vão falar que está vendendo DevOps, ou tá em algum time praticando aí, executando práticas de DevOps, você saber isso, de repente você cai num time que tem que distribuir um modelo. E aí, como faz? Como testa? E se o modelo piorar? Ela estava falando agora na apresentação dela sobre monitorar as coisas depois que você faz o deploy, né, para fazer rollback, se for o caso. Se encaixa, né? Pode ser mais fácil ou mais difícil, mas se encaixa. Pô, então vai ser bem interessante. A gente está negociando ainda, né, Vini? Mais duas trilhas parecidas, só para ficar claro. Essa trilha ela vai ser paralela aos encontros regulares, tá? Então a gente vai continuar com esses encontros regulares, como foi hoje, de assuntos não tão relacionados, mas a gente está trabalhando em trilhas com conteúdo estruturado, né? Que tem ali um começo, meio e fim, tá? Então os workshops vão ser assim, essa trilha de machine learning vai ser assim, e a gente está negociando com duas empresas empresas estão colocando coisas em produção para trilhas com conteúdo estruturado também, tá? Enfim, é gente colocando coisa em produção que está disposta a compartilhar com a gente aqui no grupo de usuários, tá bom? Nós temos 3 licenças de 1 ano para qualquer IDE da JetBrains. Então, se você não conhece a JetBrains, shame on you. Você tem que conhecer. Os caras têm, sei lá, cara, as melhores ideias, as ideias mais premiadas que são usadas por aí. Alguém pode falar assim, não, que agora eu só uso Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code é do caramba mesmo, eu também acho, mas eu aqui que programo com C Sharp, .NET, não abro mão de jeito nenhum do meu ReSharper no Visual Studio. Visual Studio não serve para nada sem o ReSharper. Pronto, falei. Fui polêmico agora. Mas então aí são 3 licenças e são 2 créditos da AWS de $25. Pessoal, como é que a gente vai fazer isso hoje? Você vai mandar um e-mail para awsugsp@gmail.com e os primeiros 5 e-mails que chegarem vão ganhar os brindes nessa ordem, tá? As 3 licenças, você vai receber o código e os 2 créditos da AWS de $25, tá bom? Então manda lá o assunto, pode colocar AWS SP55 brindes. Pode colocar só brindes, a gente vai ver, tá? Então a gente vai, os 5 primeiros e-mails que chegarem, awsugsp@gmail.com, vão levar os brindes nessa sequência, tá? As 3 licenças e 2 créditos. Em geral, a gente roda um Kahoot para isso aqui, mas, de novo, a gente estava com muito medo de passar o tempo ali da apresentação com ela, que estava apresentando lá de madrugada, e aí a gente optou por fazer isso hoje, tá? É isso. Vini, quer complementar com alguma coisa?
Não, só mais uma vez reforçar, pessoal, muita coisa legal esse ano aqui, com certeza. Então participe, fiquem atentos aqui no Twitter do AWS User Groups, aqui nas divulgações, porque vem muita coisa boa. Já tem algumas aqui que acabamos de divulgar e com certeza virão outras aqui ao longo dos próximos meses. Eu estou muito animado de estar aqui e vamos que vamos.
Excelente. Alguém está falando aqui, eu uso Visual Studio Enterprise, hein? Eu também uso Enterprise, mas sem o ReSharp ele não vale para nada, Paiva. É isso então, pessoal. Boa noite para todo mundo. Obrigado por quem compareceu e a gente se vê nas nossas próximas iniciativas, tá? Um abração. Tchau, tchau.